Baby, won't you call me the moment you get there? Yeah, yeah. That's all I know. I had to Google that. That is from Ms. Ross, the Boss, in the early 1970s. So, hello. Thank you for listening. This is Malika Lee, host of Answering the Inner Call. This episode, we have been running down. If you haven't listened to the previous episodes, run it back, Jack. Run it back, Jill. We're talking about the 5 points of being a spiritual superstar. And I picked that song because it had call in it. So we're on point number 3. This is on the masculine side. So if you don't have any context to this, please hit the pause, go to the episode that talks about the 5 points of being a spiritual shining star. A couple episodes back, it gives you a context of the whole 5 points and benefits. And we're going to resume now at point 3, or you can listen to this episode as a standalone of Answering the Inner Call. As point number 3, I consider this a masculine energy, and I go through that of what's the masculine and what's feminine and why on that episode that I just referenced. And Answering the Inner Call, the reason it's considered masculine is that it's an action. It's an outer, usually it's going to be an outer expression. And so this is an important part of the whole spiritual enchilada, for lack of a better word. So much so that I've called this podcast Answering the Inner Call. I renamed it. And I have some stories about that personally. What Answering the Inner Call is, I will detail shortly, but what it requires, that's the thing. There are 2 parts that I think require quite a bit of our energy, of our time, of our focus, and that masculine expression of that is answering the inner call. And its feminine counterpart, I would call, is doing the spiritual work, which we'll get to in more detail in an upcoming episode. So what is answering the inner call? What is answering the call? There's a scripture in the Bible that says, all are called and few are chosen. And I'm paraphrasing. There's a line from A Course in Miracles, which I have shared in a previous episode, in the previous episode on spiritual study, that's what speaks to my soul and spirit and supports my mind in having context and deepening relationship with God intellectually. And there's a sentence in it that says, all are called, but few choose to answer the call. So what is this call? What is all of this about? What am I talking about? So basically, how I have experienced a call and how I'm defining a call for this context I'm going to call them, they are invitations. So before, when somebody would say they answered the call or there was a calling on their lives, usually there is a spiritual connotation associated with that. But most people that I would hear use that vernacular are those that were in the church, right? That were called to be ministers or to serve within that framework in some way. I want to challenge that and loosen that up a bit and say that we are all called all the time. And it's not a call to ministry necessarily. It's a call and a willingness and an invitation to be of service. And it could be in that moment. It could be with a stranger. It could be with a loved one. It could be something simple, answering a call. It could be something that is a long time commitment. So I'll give some examples. And then I think in a follow-up episode or in future subsequent episodes, I'll detail some of my own experiences of what these calls have looked like. And I have a whole workshop called Answering the Inner Call. So if you would like some support and discernment of these calls and in a deeper dive, the course, I think it's very reasonably priced. It's only an hour and a half long. And I'll put that link in the description for you to check that out. Cop it. It'll support you. And you know what's so interesting is that sometimes people think, and myself, I've thought in the past, so I'll include myself in that sometimes walking the walk of being of service to a higher power means that you have to be broke, or that you have to, that it's turning our backs to money or comfort or things like that. And, I want to challenge that notion, because there's so many people who I would consider, and I think you would agree with me, financially successful in the worldly sense of the word, that speak about different opportunities and calls that they've had on their life that they've taken. And that has been one of the things that supported them in their success, their financial success. So with that, the person that's coming to mind, and this is a great example of answering the call, is, for example, Oprah Winfrey. She is really our modern day Madam C.J. Walker. For those who are not familiar with Madam C.J. Walker, she was the very first African-American woman millionaire in this country, Oprah being a billionaire. In her call, I remember watching something, and she spoke about how, the talk show space, when she was getting started, was very crowded. There were so many different talk shows. It was a very competitive space and arena. And she was doing initially what everybody else was doing. It was a mess and a shit show and all that other stuff. And she said that she decided to go a different route and to deepen in being herself and sharing more of what she was learning and what was important to her. And so she went a different route and started sharing things that were important to her in books that she had come across, like, is it called Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukav? And, started speaking more about spirituality, about her faith, and all these different things. And Oprah was number one in her market and in the game. Like, of all the talk show hosts, she was the prima ballerina. And that came in concert with her being true to herself and answering that call to be true to herself. So one of the things that answering the call requires of us, and that was just one example, is that it requires faith and it requires courage. Generally, when we get a call, and a call could be a physical call, somebody could be asking something of you, so it could look like that. It could be an inner inspiration. Like I said, I go through this in the workshop and break down in quite a lot of details and examples of the different criteria and anatomies of, like, what is a call and what is not a call. But generally, I would say those are the two things, regardless of the form the call takes, that those are the elements that are required: faith and courage. And generally, it comes as something that, in my own experience, has seemed irrational or illogical. Like, why am I getting the thought to do this? This doesn't make any logical sense. Usually that's going to be a call, or something you brush off like a little whisper, easy to forget, and then you think about it later. That usually is a call. So I'm giving you some of the high level things right now. So how is that part of our spiritual, becoming a spiritual superstar? Because that's where some of the action comes in. Like I said, it requires faith and courage. And generally, whenever we're answering a call, we are providing a service in some way, shape, or form through our brethren. I remember hearing something like, God doesn't have hands and feet physically, but we do. And it is through our hands and our works and our feet, if we're willing, that God can use us and work through us. And that's the part where answering the call comes in. The reason why this podcast is called Answering the Inner Call, and I changed the name, is that during a meditation, I got the inspiration to start a podcast and to do this. Let me tell you, I didn't want to. I was scared and uncomfortable. I didn't know how. I really put it off for a number of years. And then finally, I just started taking those actions because the resistance and it was so persistent. It meaning like this inner nudge to do it was so persistent and relentless, and equally matched was my resistance to it and fear, that I just surrendered to it and finally started taking those steps. So part of answering that inner call, it requires a lot of faith, and because it can be uncomfortable and outside of our comfort zone. There's usually a growth edge to it. But what happens when we have to step outside of ourselves is that generally we have to have faith and trust and a power and a presence greater than we know ourselves to be. And so another element of that is humility. So I've named a couple of different things that are, an integral part of a spiritual practice, right? Faith, courage, service. This is where the rubber meets the road on answering the inner call. Action. And so, like I gave the example with Oprah, that was a long game answering the inner call, right? She did her show for 20 plus years, 25 years, I think. And she may have gotten this inspiration to kind of change the course and direction of the content that she started putting out pretty early, let's say within the first 4 or 5 years, 6 years, I don't know, of her show. So she stayed with that trajectory. Once she got that clarity and started taking those actions, she stuck with that for pretty much, and they had other types of shows, but she stuck with that same kind of energy for the rest of that trajectory. So that was like a 20 plus year call. And then she did Super Soul Sundays and all that. So all of that was from that germ, that initial seed and call of being true to herself and sharing her spirituality and her learnings along the way with others, and using her show as a platform. That's a long form call. A short form call could be something very simple. For example, that you notice someone when you're at the grocery store, there's a lot of self-checkout, but let's say you get in a line and you have somebody that's checking you out right at the register, and you just get the thought to just ask them, like, how are they doing today? And to really be genuinely interested in making a connection. Maybe you notice that they're feeling a little down, or something might just seem off, not making eye contact, and you initiate, or before you initiate, you just get the thought, I want to just check in with them, make sure that they're good. I want to see how they're doing. Or the thought could just be, ask them how they're doing, like genuinely, with an open heart. That could be that could be a call. And if you choose to answer it, that call might only take 2 minutes. As long as it takes for them to scan you up and ring up your groceries and check you out of there, 5 minutes and it's bada bing, bada boom, you're done. So those are the examples of like the time commitments of answering those calls. And I'm wondering if you're already thinking back to a time, now that I've shared this, that you listened to it or that you didn't. I have, at one point in time, I'd like to believe that my list is longer now of the times I've listened and answered than when I didn't. But there was a period of time probably where it might have been a tit for tat, or that not answering was longer. And part of that was because I didn't understand what was going on, and I would just discount or dismiss those ideas and invitations. Now I know better. And I hope that if nothing else in listening to this, that you look at those experiences differently, and now will make a conscious choice to be a bit more willing and to be of service to your fellow brother, sister, and yourself in a way that you are invited to do by answering that inner call. Again, if you'd like to take a deeper dive into what this can look like and what it means in your life and applying some of these principles, please check out my online course. It's about an 1.5-hour workshop that I walk you through, and it includes a PDF handout for you to do the exercises and prompts along with it, to really get some clarity about different calls on your life in the past and what's up for you now. And it'll support you in taking actions, especially if you're feeling stuck. It'll support you in getting some clarity to move forward. If you are already aware of some of those calls and still feeling stuck, maybe fear or rationalization or distractions or all these other things are up for you, then I would invite, and you want to make a different choice, and or you want support in making a different choice and letting go of some of that resistance and some of those barriers that are in the way, then I encourage you to click the link to schedule a 35-minute consult. If you're already willing and ready and recognizing that doing it on your own isn't working and you're ready to make a different choice and would like some support, please schedule an appointment with me for us to explore this together. Let me tell you, I'm going to give it to you straight. I'm just going to be myself up front so you know what you would be getting. We're going to keep it real, but also keep it real, compassionate, loving, supportive, honest. Sometimes if it requires a pull or a push or a kick, that, I access everything in the toolkit to be of support to you and just listen to the guidance that I get. But so it's going to get real if you're ready. So if you do feel ready, if that speaks to you, oh, we're going to laugh. There might be some tears, all that good stuff. And you're ready to go on that kind of a ride with the person who's going to ride with you, assuming that we agree that we're a good fit for one another, then schedule that call by clicking that link below. It'll just be an audio call for you to share what you're up to, what you want to be up to, where you're getting stuck and stopped, where you need support, and what you feel like is calling you that just won't let you go, and that you're ready to answer and stop running. So with that, I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. If no one's told you today how magnificent you are, how lovely you are, how beautiful you are, how radiant you are, then I'm honored to have the privilege to remind you of that right now in this moment, and that you're so deeply loved. I love you, and I know I'm not the only one. So many blessings. Until the next time, be good to yourself. Keep going, keep growing. You'll keep glowing. Peace.